There are some tracks that just make you go, what am I listening to? Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Molly, and in this video I'm going to be ranking all of the studio albums from the British band Gorillaz. So I was kind of inspired to do this video because I'm not super familiar with a ton of the Gorillaz music. I know some of their tracks. I've never listened to all of their albums in full until last year when they put out Song Machine Season 1 Strange Times, and I listened to that album completely and really enjoyed it. There are a lot of great songs on there, so it kind of made me want to go back and listen to all of the albums that the Gorillaz have done. So I figured, why not, while I'm at it, just make a little ranking video and see which Gorillaz album comes out on top, which one ends up being my favorite. Again, this is obviously based completely on my taste in music, so it's completely subjective, but this is just my opinion and it's for fun. So yeah, hope you all enjoy the video and let's get into the ranking. Alright, so I have my little ranking system pulled up here. So A+ is absolute perfection. A is like this close to perfection, just maybe missing one or two little things. B is just a solid album, so nothing absolutely fantastic, but really enjoyable, still a solid listen to. C is kind of just forgettable, meh. And then D is just overall not a favorite of mine personally. So in this video, I'm just going to be going through these albums in order of when they were released. So we're going to be starting with the Gorillaz debut album titled Gorillaz. It was released in 2001. I found this album really to have a lot of cool sounds on it that they used. Like on Tomorrow Comes Today, they use some harmonica that they throw in there. One of my favorites actually too is Soundcheck. They use like a DJ spinning record sound effect, or at least that's what it sounded like to me. Double bass is super groovy. I don't know, I just found this album to use a lot of cool sound effects. It's fun. I feel like it's a very fun album, but it's also very low-key and chill as well, if that makes sense. And then I think probably my favorite track on this album is Starshine. Again, just a very chill, laid back, subdued song, but it also has this great groove to it. That's just kind of my overall feeling of this album. It's just got a nice vibe to it, and it's like relaxing to listen to, but there's still kind of a grooviness, upbeat quality about it. Overall, I like this album. There are a few tracks that don't quite seem to fit perfectly. And also, I think this album tends to be just a little bit long-winded, and I think if they had omitted like just a couple of tracks, this would be a solid album for sure. I mean, it still is. It's a very enjoyable listen to. So overall, this is a hard one. I think the debut album by Gorillaz, I think I'm going to be putting in B. I think I'm going to put it right in the middle. It's definitely a really solid listen to. I do enjoy it. I go back to listen to certain tracks off of it, but to listen through beginning to end, it's maybe not an album I would return to very often. Next up, we have Demon Days. This album came out in 2005. I think this is probably the Gorillaz' most iconic album, if you want to call it that, or most well-known. But Demon Days is fantastic. I love this album. It is very enjoyable to listen to. There are some amazing, catchy songs on here. I think Demon Days is a little bit more upbeat than their debut album. Their debut album just has this really chill vibe to it. But I think Demon Days, I found it to be a little more upbeat, a little bit more energetic. And on Demon Days, the band still plays around with a lot of cool songs. I think it works a little bit better though than it did on their debut album. And there's more cohesion between the tracks, I find, on Demon Days. The intro song on Demon Days is great. It kind of sets the tone for the whole album. It works great as a starting track. And then of course Feel Good Inc., one of the Gorillaz' most popular songs by a landslide, is on Demon Days. Definitely one of my favorite songs. El Mañana is another fantastic track on this album, a standout for me for sure. There's almost a melancholia about it, which is interesting because the Gorillaz you associate with more upbeat kind of music, and El Mañana is just more slowed down. There's kind of a sad feeling to it, but I really enjoy it at the same time. And then of course we have the track Dare, which is super catchy, really upbeat, and it still has that like very Gorillaz style groove to it. But yeah, this is a fantastic album. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to it, and for me, Demon Days, I think I'd I think I'd put that in A+. I don't really have anything to fault the album for. It's extremely enjoyable and it's just a good time to listen to that album. And it's so iconically Gorillaz that, yeah, we're just gonna throw that in A+. Next up, we have Plastic Beach. This one came out in 2010, and I'm really, really torn on this album. I think this is probably the hardest Gorillaz album for me to rank, in all honesty, because there are some tracks on this album that are so good, and then there are others I just don't really get into. In my opinion, the middle part of Plastic Beach is so good. It's like the middle chunk of this album is fantastic. It's like the beginning couple of tracks and the ending lose me. They don't really capture my interest. And as funky and fun as this album is, it doesn't have as good a flow to it as the first two albums by the Gorillaz did, in my opinion. I don't know, there's just something kind of missing for me on Plastic Beach. With that being said though, there are some fantastic tracks on this album, like I said. I love the sound and just the effects they use on Glitter Freeze, and Empire Ants is another really cool track. Empire Ants just has this nice little groove to it, it's great. And On Melancholy Hill, another classic Gorillaz song, I love that one too. And then we have Stylo, which might be my favorite Gorillaz song ever, and it is on Plastic Beach. I love this song. It's so incredibly catchy. It's by far the standout on this album for me. Yeah, I'm just not sure. I'm so torn on Plastic Beach. There are elements I love about this album, and there are elements I really don't like. I will be honest, I might have put this album in C. I think for the sole reason that Stylo is on it, I'm gonna promote it to B. I think I'm gonna put Plastic Beach in B. I'll put it below the debut album by the Gorillaz though. Up next, we have the Gorillaz album The Fall. This one also came out in 2010, so the Gorillaz were working hard in 2010. But The Fall, for me, is just kind of a strange little album. I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. On one hand, it's very atmospheric. There's, again, you just have a great, like, chill vibe to it to listen to. I also found this album to be really relaxing. There's more minimal vocals on it. The focus on The Fall is definitely more on the synths and like the musical backings, and it makes for kind of a more atmospheric, chill, just relaxing, almost soundtrack sounding album, which is kind of nice. Actually, it's kind of a nice little listen to, but this album I feel like starts really strong and it just quickly went downhill for me. I don't know. Overall, this album just lost me. There are a couple of tracks I do enjoy on this album. Chi-Town is one that I was drawn to. It kind of has this outer space atmospheric sound to it, if that makes sense. Kind of dreamy and nice and relaxing to listen to. Just toward the end of this album though, like the middle and the end portion of this album, there are some tracks that just make you go, what am I listening to? Joplin Spider, there's something kind of catchy about that song, but yet very strange. And The Speak It Mountains is another odd one for me. And then the last track, Seattle Yodel, what even is that song? It's so weird. So The Fall is, I'm just in a quandary with this one. There are elements I kind of enjoy, but it's just so strange, and it doesn't really work for me. I don't know. There are a couple tracks I mildly enjoy listening to, but I think I'm going to put The Fall in D. That might be a little bit harsh. Maybe it's more deserving of a C. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. It kind of a weird little album. All right, so the Gorillaz 2017 album Humanz is up next. This album is really great. There are some amazing tracks on here. This is a super upbeat, catchy album. I think of all of the Gorillaz albums, I found this one to be the most upbeat, almost party scene sounding album, I guess, if you could call it that. Again, you have so many diverse sounds on this album. It works great. This album also has a really great electronic, kind of futuristic sound to it that I enjoy. And that combined with like the more upbeat qualities, it's just a very catchy album to listen to for sure. The one thing about this album I don't love is it just seems like it has a really long runtime. And it doesn't. I think it's only about 50 minutes long, but it just seemed to be longer than necessary, and maybe some of that has to do with all of the short little interludes that they put on this album. There's like, I think 20 something tracks on here, but it's only 50 minutes long, but it's because there's all of these little short, like 5 to 20 second long interludes. I didn't really find them necessary. I think I would have preferred this album without those interludes. But some of the standout tracks for me on Humanz, I would say Strobe Light is a great track. Again, you have that party sound, kind of a disco vibe to it. Very jazzy and upbeat for sure. Super catchy song. Andromeda, definitely one of the more popular songs on this album. One of my favorites on this one. Kind of just a chill, relaxed song. I love the synths and the bass on Andromeda. Busted in Blue is one of the standouts for me on this album. I love this track. Again, a more subdued, melancholy one for Gorillaz. I love Damon Albarn's vocals on this track too. It just works really, really well with the instrumentals and the music. So, Humanz, I am in a little bit of a pickle with this album. I don't know where to rank it. I want to put it in A. There are many tracks on this album that I love, but there are some I'm just not drawn to. It seems a little bit long-winded, but I really like it. I like Humanz a lot. A or B? I'm kind of torn on this one. I will put Humanz in B. I'll put it at the top of B though. So I'll put it above the debut album and Plastic Beach. Next up is the Now Now. This album came out in 2018, and this album for me just is kind of forgettable. It's very smooth. There's kind of like a slick, futuristic sound to it that's appealing to a certain extent. It's almost kind of just an ambient album, to be honest, which is, again, it's enjoyable to listen to. There's just not really any standout tracks. I guess if I had to pick one that is more memorable, I really like Trans. That's a great song. Very catchy and upbeat for sure, with a great groove to it. But I don't know, the Now Now just not my favorite. It's not a bad album, but not really that memorable, so I think I'm going to put that one in C. And last up, we have the Gorillaz' most recent album, Song Machine Season 1 Strange Times. This one was released last year in 2020. I really, really enjoyed this album when it came out. It's got some fantastic tracks on it. This album is almost, I think it's entirely all features, so it's songs featuring other artists, which I'm very picky about. I typically don't love a lot of tracks that feature other singers and artists, but this album does a fantastic job of making great features. There's also a great flow on this album from track to track that works great. I think really the only thing I could kind of nitpick this album on is its runtime. It's a little bit long-winded, but overall, most of the tracks are very like earwormy, super catchy. Some of the standouts for me, I love Strange Times. That's a great one. It's a surprising vocal combo that works great. Valley of the Pagans is just kind of a comical one. I just enjoy listening to that. It's a fun listen. And then Dead Butterflies is another good one. Super chill and relaxing and yet still groovy. Opium is another one too. I love the groove on Opium. Fantastic track. So I think overall, Song Machine Season 1, Strange Times, I just really enjoy it. It's a solid listen to. I've listened to this album several times and I've loved it every single time. It's not as perfect as Demon Days, but for me it's a solid A. I'm happy putting that album in A. So yeah, that is my final Gorillaz album ranking. So in A+, which is essentially perfection, we have Demon Days. That's my favorite Gorillaz album. It's so good. In A, we have their most recent album, Song Machine Season 1 Strange Times. Thoroughly enjoyed listening to that one. In B, right in the middle, so albums that I really enjoy listening to overall. There's just some things I don't love about them, but they're solid for sure. We have Humanz, their debut album Gorillaz, and Plastic Beach. In C, so just kind of forgettable albums that aren't favorites of mine, we have the Now Now. And then in D, we have The Fall. Just a strange little album, not my favorite. So that is going to do it for my Gorillaz album ranking. I am glad I did this video. I finally have listened to more of the Gorillaz stuff, and I really enjoy their music. It's super fun, catchy, just very chill, groovy music to listen to. Definitely let me know down in the comments what your favorite Gorillaz album is and if you agree with me or disagree with me. Anyway, as usual, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.